Nō mai, haere mai, welcome. I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist Professor Robert Patman and historian and author Dr. Peter Grace. And this is Global Insight. United States President Donald Trump has fast-tracked a shift towards political leaders sidestepping experts in the name of just getting it done. But a significant new book by Dr. Grace suggests that politicians should be doing the opposite. Welcome, Robert. Welcome, Peter. Dr. Grace, can you tell us how you came to write this book, The Intelligence Intellectuals?
Well, I started researching it a few years ago in 2017, and it was a time, early Trump administration, where the world was moving at a rapid pace, changing very quickly, and increasingly becoming a more dangerous place. And it's at times like that when you need experts to give you an interpretation on where the world is going. We need experts for a couple of reasons. One is the interpretation. The other one is to try and give us some sort of understanding of how we make conclusions about the world. Right. So at the beginning of the 1950s, you have the Cold War heating up with the Korean War, and you have these professors being brought into CIA in order to give better analysis of where the world's heading.
Right. So following on from that, what did your research reveal about the role of academics and other experts in the development of the CIA?
Well, the CIA at that time was going through a massive struggle. It started in 1946, 1947, and it had a really rocky patch up until 1950. They got three things really badly wrong. They hadn't anticipated the Soviets getting the atomic bomb early. They hadn't anticipated the China turning communist, and they hadn't anticipated the breaking out of the Korean War. So there was a lot of distrust and dissatisfaction with CIA, and the bringing of the social scientists into that meant that CIA was going to, work on a new way of thinking about where the world was heading. So the first thing that they brought to it was a rigor, an analytical rigor that could be explained. If you think about the physical sciences and the scientific method, it's a way of observing what's going on, testing hypotheses, and then being able to reach conclusions where you can explain to somebody very simply what's happening and justify your opinion or your assessment. And that's what the social scientists brought in large to CIA, a rigor about intelligence assessment that they hadn't had previously.
And did it prove to be effective? Did it help the CIA?
Well, again, you have an enormous amount of pressure that's going on with the Korean War. In the middle of the Korean War, you've got the atomic bomb and the Soviets getting the bomb. And so you've got a rapidly changing and very dangerous world. And the fact that they could justify their conclusions in a scientific way, a social scientific way, the fact that they could bring in other elements that hadn't been considered before about cultures and society, about economies, about psychology, the other social sciences also bringing into that assessment, meant that they were much more full assessments than they'd had in the past.
Right, interesting. Professor Patman, what's your assessment of Dr. Grace's book?
I think it's a landmark book. It's published by Georgetown University Press. I think Peter's one of the first New Zealanders to have a book of this nature published by Georgetown University Press. It's a tremendous piece of scholarship. It's very well written, it's fluently written, it's meticulously researched, and it's consistently insightful. So I think it appeals to multiple audiences. The thing that I really like about Peter's book is that it will appeal both to academics and students, but it will appeal to the wider audience because it's so accessible. I think the test of good writing is not to use jargon, but to be able to explain some complex things in accessible language to make it, accessible. And as Peter indicated, the United States was a young foreign policy actor in the immediate post-war period. Many of us forget this with the passage of time. It was facing what was for the United States an unprecedented challenge, a systemic challenge, not just a military challenge from a great power. It was being challenged ideologically by a country which had a different vision of the world and looked like it had the potential to back up that vision. So the bringing in of 3 academics from top institutions in the United States through social scientists, as Peter indicated, was quite a bold move, but I think it was precipitated, as Peter suggested, by an atmosphere of crisis. And to me, it was a remarkably bold move, and it is really important because the CIA were basically stagnating at the time they were brought in, and within a short period of time, the CIA were going about their business in a much more methodical, purposeful fashion. So they clearly made an impact.
Dr. Grace's book is about the development of the CIA. What implications do you see, wider implications of his findings do you see?
Well, I think the power, the intellectual power of Peter's book is that he turns upside down an argument that's become popular in contemporary politics. This idea, particularly circulated by populist politicians, that experts don't matter, that we don't need people who've got great knowledge about things. And that's become almost a sneering attitude to people who've developed expertise. Given the dismal record of policy making, not just in this country, but many liberal democracies, when dealing with very complex problems, I think we need to revisit this. So in short, I think the strength of Peter's book is he upturns the argument that experts don't matter. They clearly do matter. And the other thing is that, as Peter indicated, those experts in his book were brought in at a time of crisis. Well, we are facing multiple challenges at the moment, and the question is our government in New Zealand making the best use of all the various experts in the sciences as well as in the social sciences to deal with these problems? In other words, we often hear this whole of government approach, but maybe we need a whole of society approach. That was one of my reflections on reading Peter's book.
Right, fascinating. And I was wanting to ask you, Peter, is New Zealand guilty of following this trend of thinking that experts just get in the way?
I think I'd like to flip that, and it comes back to what Robert was just saying. The thing that the social scientists brought to CIA was clarity, and also impartiality and objectivity. And in a populist administration, they reward loyalty. They don't reward impartiality. They don't like people who speak truth to power. So CIA got a reputation over a long period of time of being too liberal. And one of the reasons why was because they actually called things out when they felt that, for example, the Vietnam War, when they felt things were not right. Now, no administration likes to be told that it's doing things wrong. But I think the New Zealand government and the New Zealand, particularly MFAT and the national security agencies, are very willing to listen to different points of view. They like the clarity that an expert can bring, particularly those experts who've got hands-on experience in countries that we're talking about, in the Middle East, for instance, or Russia, places like that, China. They like to hear what's going on the ground. And they sometimes bridle at being told truth to power. But I would say the New Zealand people are much more open-minded about experts and far less likely to dismiss them.
That sounds very good. Is there anything that could be enhanced? Are there any improvements that could be made?
Well, there's a couple of places where we could make improvements. One of those places is more research. So we're in an environment academically where, particularly in the social sciences, research is underfunded. So there are big questions going on in the world right now that social science can help answer, but there's absolutely no incentive for universities to be promoting that within their faculties. So social scientists are teaching they're administrating, but the amount of new research that's coming out in this country is a little bit slim.
Right, thank you. And Robert, any thoughts on how we could enhance things in New Zealand or how we could reverse that trend globally?
I think both the role of government and government institutions, as well as the universities and educational institutions, both have a role to play. I think the government probably needs to continue an outreach program to universities. Otago University is one of the few universities actually in New Zealand which regularly hosts events like the University of Otago Foreign Policy School and also the National Security School, which Peter's played a key role in driving. And the beauty of these events is they're not purely academic events, they bring together academics and policy makers. And it's mutually advantageous for these meetings to occur. I think both go away from it feeling enriched from the occasion. But these are relatively few and far between. So I think the government and the universities should be looking, not just in the social sciences, but in the sciences generally, for more occasions where they can come together and exchange ideas, particularly on crucial issues. I mean, at the end of the day, we all want elected governments to produce good quality policy. And this is what it's about. So I do think on the academic side, I think there is room for academics, and for example, academics are trained to let the evidence speak for themselves. Maybe we have to become a little bit more of advocates for the evidence when it presents itself. And this is not confined just to social scientists, but also to scientists, because these problems affect all of us, and we can't just sit back and allow people who've got perhaps potentially a disregard for experts to win the argument. So I do think maybe the role of the academic is changing in the 21st century, and they need to contribute more to policy debates, either through the media or through their own research. So I think there's room for improvement on both sides, and I think ultimately there's a common aim, which is to improve the quality of our intelligence services and improve the quality of our policy making generally.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Peter. And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Noho ora mai.